My talk today is about scalable and efficient cellular network analytics. This is a joint work with Lee Aran Lee at Bell Labs and my advisor Ion Stoica at UC Berkeley. Cellular networks have been growing at such a tremendous rate that they have literally become part of our daily lives. We rely on these networks for many of our daily activities, ranging from driving directions to looking up restaurant reviews and more. But this growth has resulted in a number of issues. With the proliferation of smart devices such as mobile phones and tablets, cellular networks have been pushed to their limits. Oftentimes, they experience problems. For instance, these are some of the problems I'm sure many of us have faced during our daily interaction with cellular networks. We might have experienced problems with connecting to the network. We might be able to connect to the network, but we may not be able to use it at all. When such issues occur, users become frustrated. And the implication of this is that cellular network operators are now under pressure to ensure end user satisfaction. How can operators solve these issues? What do they need to find out what the problem is and fix them? We have found that it's useful for them to get timely insights from the networks so that they can figure out what the issue is. For instance, understanding regions of heavy usage in the network can help them do better load balancing and fix those issues. Similarly, finding out how users are moving in the network may result in better resource provision. And more fine-grained analysis can be useful for fine-grained troubleshooting. Thus, analytics is of great interest to network operators. I will revisit some of these tasks throughout the talk as examples when I explain different aspects of our solution. Network analytics is not new. Operators have been using them for many years, although the interest in them have been growing recently. So existing cellular network analytics function as follows. Operators collect a large number of traces from the network. These traces can range from control plane messaging to fine-grained logs such as TCP flow level records. The information is collected at different locations in the network, and an operator may also instrument different parts of the network with sniffers if there are some critical issues. The collected information is then aggregated and sent over the network to a data center, typically owned by the network operator. The transfer process occurs periodically and can range from minutes to once a day or so. Once enough data has been transferred, then they are processed. Traditionally, this processing was done using databases. However, with the increase in the amount of data that is coming in, newer systems have been moving to big data processing frameworks such as Hadoop or variants of it. The processing step is also done periodically, typically once a day. The result of such processing jobs is hundreds or thousands of reports, and these reports are essentially displayed in dashboards for network experts to see and analyze. Once they see them and analyze and figure out issues, they can go back and fix their networks. The problem with existing cellular network analytics systems is that they were not designed with efficiency as the first priority. This is because the notion of analytics always has been to produce offline reports, and hence they are too slow for the analytic tasks that I mentioned earlier in the talk. So our work focuses on the question of whether we can improve these systems. Doing so needs us to address a number of challenges. A typical cellular network can generate several millions or several billions of records every minute from a very small region itself. In addition, many of the tasks that I mentioned earlier are useful if they are run continuously. Moreover, many of these tasks might be computationally intensive because of the spatiotemporal nature of these tasks. So our contribution in this work is CellIQ, a cellular network analytics system that tries to address these challenges and support efficient analytics. And to do so, it leverages domain-specific optimizations. CellIQ is based on a very simple observation that cellular network data can be seen as a graph that evolves over time. In this graph, network entities such as users and base stations are nodes, and edges are found between these nodes based on different criteria. The information exchange between these nodes, such as control plane messages, can be stored as vertex or edge properties, thus making this a property graph. Once we see this as a property graph, it's easy to envision that many of the tasks that I talked about earlier can be seen as graph computations. For example, the hotspot computation can be posed as a connected component problem. Similarly, user traffic can be done using an iterative algorithm like Pregel. So the immediate question to ask, and I'm sure many of you are already thinking about this, is that there has been a tremendous amount of work happening in graph analytic systems and graph parallel processing systems, so why not just use one of those systems? We did that, and we took a state-of-the-art graph analysis system and implemented many of these analytic tasks in it. This figure is from one of the experiments that we did. In the x-axis, we have the size of the data set, and the y-axis shows the analysis time. And we see two problems here. First of all, the analysis is not efficient enough. For instance, doing even analysis on a minute data takes more than a minute, and it's not useful if it's not timed. Second, in larger data sets, the framework does not complete the analysis task because of the inefficient way it runs these analysis. This experience helped us to learn the fact that domain-specific optimizations are really required if you want to achieve our goal of efficient analysis. So we have implemented CellIQ as a layer on top of GraphX, a graph processing engine that is built on Apache Spark. By building on top of an existing graph computation framework, it helps us to leverage many of the functionalities provided by it. For example, there are different algorithms already implemented in GraphX that we can leverage. And we choose GraphX because it's built on top of Spark, and it enables us to do both graph parallel and data parallel computations in one framework. But I should note here that our techniques and optimizations that I'm going to present in the talk are not restricted to GraphX, but it's widely applicable to different graph processing systems. So the computational model adopted by CellIQ is this domain-specific graph representation. At different points in time, the network looks different. This is because users may come in, they may hand over to different base stations, and so on. So the computation is not a single graph, but a series of network snapshots, and we call them graph streams. CellIQ enables 3 operations on these graph streams. First of all, it places the edges and vertices for efficient operation. Second, it allows spatial operations on individual graphs in this graph stream. And finally, it exposes some API for operating on multiple graphs on this stream. In the rest of the talk, I will go into the details of each of these, starting with the graph partitioning scheme adopted by CellIQ. So graph partitioning is a key component in any distributed graph parallel processing framework, and the goal of such a partitioning scheme is to divide the graph among multiple machines so that the communication is minimized and the computation is balanced. But in CellIQ, the partitioning requirement also comes with an additional constraint. The entities in these graphs are not any random entities, they are entities in actual real world. So the graph partitioning problem in CellIQ is to distribute these objects in space to machines so as to balance computation and minimize communication. So we need to map objects in 2D to one dimension, that is the machines. A standard approach to obtaining a good balance in computation is to do random hash partitioning on a high cardinality field. For example, in this case, there are objects that are distributed in space, and we can just use the ID of the vertices to do partitioning based on a hash function on the ID. This will make sure that the vertices in each of these partitions are balanced, but it comes with a problem, that it results in very poor spatial locality. Many of the tasks that I mentioned earlier depends on neighborhood computation, and they need to have very good spatial locality. And this is not preserved using a random hash partition. So our approach to partitioning in CellIQ is to use a space filling curve-based approach. The key idea in a space filling curve-based approach is to recursively partition the space under consideration. For example, in this picture, I can partition the space once on the x-axis and again on the y-axis. Then what we do is we enforce an ordering on how these subspaces can be visited. And this ordering enables us to map the 2D location of the objects in the space to a 1D. For example, A and B can have the ID 1, C and D can have ID 2, and so on. And to partition this across multiple machines, we just do a range partitioning on the key space. The space filling curve has this nice property that the recursive partitioning and the way it visits subspaces can be repeated. So based on our requirements, we have tight control over the partitioning. We can change the number of machines easily and so on. It also comes with a number of advantages for us. I'll talk about this later in the talk. Along with the space filling based partitioner, SelAQ enables spatial operations on individual graphs in this stream using the GeoGraph API. The API consists of two core functions. I will explain these APIs using simple analytic tasks that can take advantage of the APIs. Suppose we are interested in figuring out the direction of movement of large user groups in the network. Why is this useful? This is interesting to network operators because they can use it to do real-time resource allocation. If users are moving in one direction, they can provision more resources in that area. We can use a simple algorithm to do this task. If we zoom into one particular area in the network, we see that there are geographically distributed base stations. What each base station can do is it can figure out the movement of users connected to it, and then it can propagate this information to all its neighboring base stations based on some radius. For instance, here B figures out what the direction of movement of its users are, and then it propagates this information to C, A, and E. Current graph processing systems already support such kind of operations where vertices can send messages to its neighboring vertices by a hop-by-hop propagation model. So if B wants to send a message to C, A, and E, first it sends to A and C, who are its first hop neighbors, and then A sends this message to E. However, you can easily see that this becomes inefficient when the radius becomes large, and it encompasses multiple hops. So our approach in SelAQ is to enable sending this message in one iteration of the graph parallel processing framework, and we term this as radius-based broadcast exposed by the send message API. Internally, GraphX implements multicast using a routing table, which indicates what vertices needs to be sent to which partition. We can easily extend the routing table to do the radius-based propagation, but it limits us on doing dynamic radius-based propagation. But due to our use of geo-partitioning, we do not require a routing table at all. Given a vertex and the radius and the direction, we can easily figure out which partitions need this vertex and directly send these vertices across. This gives us much more flexibility. The second operation supported by the GeoGraph API is a spatial aggregation function. So many analysis tasks in cellular networks need to work on aggregated graphs. For instance, a simple analysis might require finding aggregate statistics by regions in space. SelAQ enables this in two ways. Either the user can supply an ID field based on which the vertices can be grouped, or we can also use the geo-partitioning and leverage the space filling curves. Since the way by which space filling curve partitions a space and visits the subspaces is deterministic, we can do simple bit manipulations on the key space to aggregate these vertices without doing any re-indexing at all. Finally, SelAQ provides an API for operating on windows of these geographs. Let's revisit the analysis task that I talked about earlier on finding hotspots. The goal here is to find groups of base stations that are geographically close by whose traffic volume is higher than a threshold. As I briefly mentioned earlier, this can be posed as a connected component problem. Let's imagine that we would like to do this over windows of width W. One approach is to do the following. We keep buffering the graphs at each snapshots. For instance, at T1, T2, and T3, we have different graphs. We keep buffering them. At the end of the window, we can join or merge all these graphs and then run connected component on top of it. However, this is an expensive operation because it requires multiple joins and it may result in multiple shuffle operations. Instead, a better solution is to do the following. Suppose we keep a cumulative graph whenever a graph comes in. We incrementally update the graph based on based on if two vertices, the vertex pair forms a hotspot or not. And we keep counting how many times the pair of vertices are found in the graph. And at the end of the window, we do not need to do any merge or join operation. We can simply take the cumulative graph and do connected component on top of it. This gets rid of all the join operations that we require and results in a deterministic number of operations for any arbitrary window sizes. We can also extend this approach for a sliding window operation too. In order to do that, we also need to subtract parts of the window that needs to be forgotten by applying differential updates. In this example, the cumulative graph at T4 is obtained by adding the snapshot at T4 and then subtracting what happened at T1. Both these window operations are exposed as a API, which we call as graph reduced by window in CellIQ. The API takes in two functions, one that combines two graphs and one which does the inverse of the combination. A brief thing about how we implemented this. We have implemented this using Spark's co-grouped RDD, and we provide a number of default reduce functions. For example, we provide graph intersection and graph union, using which we can do connected components, and further optimizations are available in our paper. Finally, we come to the final part of the talk on evaluating CellIQ. We did an evaluation on LTE control plane data from a major cellular network operator, which consisted of 1 million plus subscribers. These are live subscribers from a very small region, which is smaller than a state. We collected 2 terabytes of data from 1 week. We get 1 file per minute. Each file has around 750,000 records and hundreds of fields per line. We have 10 collection points, and we collect data for 10 hours per day. The first graph depicts the usefulness of geo-partitioning scheme. In this experiment, we ran the analysis on data sets of different sizes with and without the geo-partitioning scheme that I mentioned earlier. So the x-axis is the size of the data, the y-axis shows the analysis time, and the red bar indicates the analysis time without the partitioning scheme, and the green with the geo-partition. When the amount of data is small, we see that the benefits of geo-partitioning scheme is not much. This is because even though there are data movements in the network, the amount of data is small. But as the data sets become larger and larger, we see that the default partitioning scheme does not even finish doing the analysis task because of the huge data movement. We can also do the same analysis using incremental updates. So in larger data sets, instead of doing the analysis on the entire window, we can do it in smaller, we can break up the window into smaller windows and do an incremental analysis on top of it. This graph shows the result for running incremental computation on different window sizes. And we see that the incremental analysis results in significant improvements over the default implementation. An interesting observation that is worth further exploration is to find the optimal window size, because it affects the performance to a great extent. To evaluate the benefits of differential updates, we used the same analysis task and did computations on sliding window of different window sizes. We fixed the slide duration to 1 minute, and the results are shown in this figure. The green line indicates CellIQ using the graph reduced by window operation, and the strawman is just resorting to merging the graphs in the window and doing the operation. We see that in larger windows, we see greater benefits. This is because the strawman has to do multiple joins, and CellIQ does not need to do that. And because of that, we see graceful degradation in performance for CellIQ on larger windows. Finally, to evaluate the radius space propagation, we used a gradient experiment that I talked about earlier on how users are moving in the network. Here we compare against the standard hop-by-hop approach that is taken by many graph analytic systems, and we see that it results in also results in significant improvements in larger data sets. So to conclude my talk, CellIQ leverages domain-specific knowledge to do cellular network analytics. Using this knowledge, we are able to do much better than existing schemes. We are currently working on a number of improvements to CellIQ and using it for different domains. For instance, we are trying to use techniques in CellIQ to do real-time root cause analysis on operational LTE networks. On a more general setting, we are trying to use these techniques and expand them to more general areas such as any arbitrary graph processing systems. That concludes my talk, and I'm happy to take questions.
Hey, Aaron Schulman, Stanford. Hi, Anand. So question for you. Do you think that, or in the data that you're collecting, that's not data that they generally would collect? Is that the case?
No, they generally collect the data that we collected.
They do generally collect
Yeah,
it.
but if they need much more fine-grained like troubleshooting for some, say some priority one tickets, they might decide to put in extra sniffers and get much more data. But this data is collected on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious in terms of, it was my understanding that the load on the base stations from collecting this data would incentivize them to not collect
So
it.
they can, there is a knob to control how much they want to collect and what granularity they need to collect.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, the main thing I'm curious about is like, is this something that, when do you see this being needed in a cellular network? Like, is it something that you see once they start collecting more of this data, they will need it, or right now they're collecting it often enough that they would end up needing this analytics now?
So there is an increasing, so right now we cannot use this, whatever we have found out and the analytics that I mentioned earlier, to give real-time feedback to the network because the network doesn't support it.
Right.
But there is an increasing interest in self-optimizing networks where you can give real-time feedback to the network and then change the network on the fly.
Awesome. This is very nice forward-looking stuff.
Hi, Zahir Shatia, ETH.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask, what's the real-time part of this? Is it that you're doing a sequence of continuous queries, or that it's a full-on streaming engine?
So as I mentioned to Aaron, the real-time aspect is not possible right now because the network doesn't support it. If the network supports, there is no reason why we cannot just give the feedback to the network and change the network. So once the network supports it, we can definitely use it for real-time feedback.
Sure, so I guess that part is more about like how you use the results of the analysis to create a feedback loop.
Right.
But my question is more about, is this a streaming engine, or is it that you're doing a sequence of batch? Like,
So you can see this, so you can see this as combining streaming with graph analysis, right? But the problem is that the data is collected and transmitted not in a streaming fashion, but periodically. So we resort to processing it in batches, but we can do streaming too.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
I thought your geographically aware partitioning was like pretty cool, but I was just wondering, at least in the talk, you only compared it to like the random hash-based partitioning, which isn't exactly the state of the art in terms of graph partitioning. I was wondering, did you do any comparisons to other?
So GraphX provides 2D partitioning, but we compared against that too, but it doesn't really preserve spatial locality. So I agree with you that there are much more spatial partitioning schemes using tree-based schemes. But the problem with those tree-based schemes is that you need an additional lookup.